Hey guys, so a question I get asked quite often is, how do you read so much? So I spent some time in the last little while thinking about how I read as much as I do, and I want to share those with you. Now, just like a little bit of background, I am a wife and a mother, and I homeschool my kids. We're pretty relaxed in our homeschool, but I do that, and I run a couple different websites and businesses. So between all of that, I still have time in my day to read. And I think because I do a bunch of other things and reading is not just my only priority, that these ideas that I have will be able to be used by anyone. Okay, so the first idea, and probably like the most obvious one, is just to make reading a priority. Like if you want to read, you need to make time each day to do it. So instead of picking up your phone and scrolling through social media, which I mean, honestly, I still do sometimes too, but instead of doing that, or when you realize that you're doing that, like put your phone down and pick up your book. The next easy tip is just to always have a book ready. I like to have a book visible, so if I'm like kind of wandering around and I see my book, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read that yet, or this is a good time to read it, or whatever. I like having a book ready and visible. Part of having a book ready is taking a book with you wherever you go. Whenever I have doctor's appointments, I like to leave my house a little early and sit in the waiting room for a few minutes and get a little bit of reading in. And honestly, it's only mildly annoying when doctors are like ahead of schedule and I don't get to read as much in the waiting room because I've just always got that book there. The third thing, and I know this is going to be hard for a lot of people, when I was in school, grades 5 through 12, I had an hour-long bus ride to school in the morning and home from school in the afternoon. And so it was during this time that I really got good at this, and that is, don't feel like you have to read an entire chapter every time. Be ready to stop anywhere. Honestly, for like all my school years, I never used a bookmark. I would just stop in the middle of a sentence, a paragraph, whatever, shut my book, and I got really good at figuring out how to quickly find where I was again. Now, you don't need to do that. You can use a bookmark. But, you know, like, be okay with picking up your book knowing you only have a couple of minutes and you might not get a full chapter or a full page in, but, you know, like those 2 paragraphs you read add up over time, and throughout the course of the day, you might have read a few pages. This is also helpful when you're reading books that have like really long chapters. I mean, honestly, if authors could just always write a bunch of short chapters, that would be ideal. But if you're reading books with longer chapters and you're like, well, I don't have 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, to dedicate to reading right now, then you know you can just stop in the middle. This one might go against some people's ideas as well, but that is, don't be afraid to quit a book. You know, if it's not working for you, if you're really not liking it, first of all, for sure, like quit it. If you're just like, oh, it's not great, and you have no reason to continue, quit the book. I mean, for me, I feel like there are so many books on my list of books to read that I don't want to spend my time reading terrible books. I mean, I am in a situation right now where I am reading a classic that is not incredibly riveting, but I'm going to give that one a little bit more time because it is a classic. I'm going to finish it. If this was a contemporary book, I would probably have finished or like quit it already. One thing I started doing in this last year is creating a TBR. Now, I know some people think that creating a TBR won't be good for them because they're a mood reader and maybe they just won't want to read the books on their list. I get that. I was 100% a mood reader until this last year, and I have realized that actually creating a TBR has been very helpful because now I don't have like decision fatigue from like all my books, like which one should I read. Now it's like, okay, I have these like 5, 10, whatever books to choose from. Which one of these in this stack am I interested in right now? And that has made the whole like my time between books a whole lot shorter. You can also like do this with a pile of library books if you want. Like you can use your library stack as your TBR or whatever works for you. I personally like you know, choosing my TBR each month by my prompt cards, or this last month I did Bookopoly. I find it a lot of fun to choose the books, and then it makes me even more excited to read the books. Number 6 is to know your favorite genre so that when you're fighting a reading slump, you can go to that genre. So let's say that you normally like fantasy books, but you've been reading a bunch of classics lately, and you're kind of just like finding yourself dragging your heels when it comes to reading, then I'd say pick up a fantasy book, pick up something that you can read quickly and that you know you'll enjoy. And then after you've kind of like read a good book, then you know you can challenge yourself and read harder books again. Avoiding reading slumps will help you to read more books throughout the month. One thing I like to try to do is to always have an audiobook on the go. You know, you might not feel like you have a lot of time to listen to an audiobook throughout the day, but I like to listen when I'm exercising, sometimes like when I'm folding laundry, if I'm peeling potatoes, any activity that I'm doing that I can be not like something that I'm doing with my hands so that I can be listening. And if the kids are around, sometimes I'll just like have one earbud in or something so I can like still be paying attention. I recently got wireless earbuds that I'm really loving. They make exercising so easy because it doesn't get in, the cord doesn't get in the way, and I don't like the over the head ones because then I can't hear my kids. So just kind of like find what works for you there, and then always have an audiobook ready. I like to use Scribd for audiobooks a lot of the time, but before I go to Scribd, I always go to my library apps. So my library does Overdrive/Libby. They're the same thing. I don't know why they changed the name, but still have both apps going. So I use that one, and I use Hoopla, and then I will often use Scribd if I can't find those. And then sometimes I will also use Audible. Those are kind of like my main audiobook apps that I like to use. My next suggestion is to join a book club. I have either joined or started a number of book clubs over the years, and it has always given me a push to finish books. I couldn't really say that I've read that many books in the book clubs that I've been a part of that I've loved, but it has made me finish books that and start books that I probably wouldn't have either picked up or finished. And I mean, I like to be pushed out of my comfort zone, and I feel like book clubs have done that for me over the years. You know, you can do like in-person book clubs, or there are online book clubs as well. Just find out what works for you. If you want to do an in-person one, kind of just like probably start with your library. I was part of my library book club for quite some time, or you could start your own. When I did that, I just put up a thing on my local Facebook group, and I said, hey, I want to start a book club. Anyone interested? And I had so much interest that I actually had to start 2 groups. And that's a good problem to have in my mind. Okay, and then my last tip here, which I think is number 9, is to read quicker. I'm a fast reader. I always have been a fast reader. And it wasn't until, was it 6 months ago, 9 months ago, at some point here, Murphy had a video about how to read faster. I will leave that linked below. It's a very interesting video, but in that video, she was talking about how she reads, or to read faster, one of the techniques that she learned was to read the word at the beginning of a line, the word in the middle of a line, and the word at the end of the line. And then, you know, from there, your brain just like fills in the missing words. And I realized from that video that that's kind of what I do. I'm actually just gonna grab a book here and I'll show you what I do. So especially for longer paragraphs here, like I'll pick this paragraph here. I often will just read like the first, using her kind of the technique that she mentioned. I didn't even realize I did it until I watched that video, but I read like kind of the beginning here, the middle, the end. I do that for like the first couple lines, and then my brain just totally like skips over this portion of the end of the paragraph, and I kind of just read this part of the paragraph. In her video, she gives a couple tips on like how to start reading from like the beginning of a line and then the middle and then the end. It's something I just naturally did, so it's a lot harder to explain or even realize that you're doing until someone else explains it or talks about it. And there are a number of different methods for how to read faster as well. Even when it comes to audiobooks, I listen to my audiobooks on double speed, so like 2 times speed, and a couple of my apps let me go even faster. And depending on the book and the narrator, I can sometimes speed that up a little bit more. I probably actually could always speed it up more, but I don't always want to speed it up more. But 2 times speed generally is what I'm at for audiobooks. And because it takes longer to listen to a book than to read it, this helps kind of narrow that time frame down so that it doesn't take so much longer to listen to a book. Okay, so I hope those tips help you to be able to make time in your day to read quicker and get through more books. Honestly though, like keep in mind that the goal here is not to like get through as many books as you can. It's to enjoy the reading process and enjoy the books that you read. I enjoy reading fast. I enjoy reading a diverse selection of books, so I like being able to get through a bunch of books in a month. But you know, if you're content with where you're at, like, don't feel like this is a competition and you have to read faster. But if you are wanting to read more books in your days, I hope this has been helpful. And if you have any tips that I didn't mention about or how to read more or even read faster, I would love to hear them. Thanks for watching, guys.